Hello and welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's going on, everybody? You know how I like to get my podcast started, always with a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers. If you would, a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Alright, well, what I wanted to do today is I want to read to you a little bit about a chapter in this book here. It's the NA book. You see that? And there's a chapter in this book that's titled Jails, Institution, and Recovery. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit about it and then go over it with something that happened to me yesterday. And I just want to intertwine both of those two things after I read it, and maybe it'll help somebody, maybe it'll reach, have meaning to somebody like it did me yesterday. So let me get started. I'm going to read a little bit of that chapter, and then we'll talk about it. All right, here we go. Let me get these glasses on. Okay. It says, I first came to Narcotics Anonymous in a state prison. It was my third term in prison over a 7-year period, with only a few months at a time in the streets. One night in this prison, I heard of a meeting going on about something to do with drugs. Well, I could relate to this, so I decided to check it out. Besides, it would get me away from the cell for a while. I can remember how confused I was leaving the first meeting. Back in my cell, I dwelled on all those years in and out of jails, all of the things that I've been through just to get loaded. Most of all, I began thinking of how tired I was of living this kind of life. This group called Narcotics Anonymous seemed then to be little too much for me. I told myself that I wasn't a hardcore dope fiend, but just a guy who liked to get loaded every day, and a thief who could not stay out of jail. Although, in those first meetings, I did not see NA as a solution to my craziness. I did hear some things I could relate to, so I kept coming back. I heard people in NA say that they didn't take drugs anymore, not even grass. I listened. Sure, I wanted to stop all the insane situations in my life, but I didn't think I had to give up all the drugs altogether to do it. I thought that I needed to learn how to handle drugs better. Some of the NA members who came into the prison to share at these meetings had been inmates themselves. They attributed this change in their lives to the support of Narcotics Anonymous. One addict sharing and helping another addict. I enjoy hearing these people tell how it was and how it is today, and soon felt a real kinship in the pain that we had all been through. I began respecting these people in NA who talked about how they'd find a way to live without drugs, alcohol, and jails. I continued to get stoned in the institutions whatever way I could, while still attending NA meetings regularly. The members told me to keep coming back no matter what, so I did. Besides, it sure beat talking that talk in the yard. Soon I was to be transferred for pre-release to a much looser security prison. I had been there before and had been busted for smoking grass, for which I was sent to a more maximum prison. Now I was packing my property for this transfer. I remember a lot of trouble I had gotten into at that institution just to use drugs. The man knew me there, and I was pretty nervous now, thinking about being eyeballed at the time and stepped off the bus. I was already thinking hard about getting loaded when I could, and scared stiff inside knowing what would happen if I got caught again. So I was smoking a joint that morning before the long bus ride. I didn't know it then, but it was to be my last. Back in the beginning, when I was attending these NA meetings, I could wonder why it wasn't. I would wonder why it wasn't working for me like it did for others. I was tired of this drug and institutional life, but at the same point, I guess I wasn't tired enough because I was still using when I was going to the meetings. I had a decision to make on that bus ride. which was paid for by the Department of Corrections. The decision I made that day was mostly out of fear and some things I heard in those first NA meetings. I remember being in that bus, moving down the highway with the chains wrapped around my waist and shackles on my feet, uncomfortably looking at a resentful guard behind a cage with a shotgun, staring out of the windows as the miles of freedom passed me by. I wondered why I couldn't be a part of that world. Getting loaded did not feel right anymore. Yet, thinking about not taking anything sure felt strange. What a relief when later I learned that it was easier by doing it just one day at a time. Upon arrival at this other prison, I met an inmate who was an NA member. I knew him from the meetings that we both attended at the other prison. It really made a difference to see his face when I drove up because, again, I knew I had the support that would help me make it. I continued in the fellowship at this prison and became active in the service part of the program in the institution. During these last 6 months, I had to do on my sentence. I would wake up in the morning and say, just for today, I won't take anything. And I hung with NA people in the institution to keep myself away from the temptation. There were plenty of opportunities, so it wasn't easy, but I now had the support of the NA fellowship once I was let out to attend the outside meetings, which made me want the fellowship on the outside even more. I started going to the meetings clean for the first time, and something happened. The program began to work. Today, I know what makes NA work. One really starts understanding why it can work only when totally abstaining from all mind-altering chemicals. I also was beginning to understand what caring means by helping each other, what we can make of it. It felt that the only one who really understood me was another addict, and the only one who could help was a clean addict. I was so proud to stand before the group in prison, announced and that I had 90 days clean. Feeling proud was not part of my life before NA. It was such a relief not having to hustle drugs out on the yard and to do crazy things that I did to get high. I had never done time like this, and it sure felt great. I made another decision through the advice of an NA member gave me, which was the second most important decision I had ever made in my life. The decision was to have someone from the NA program at the gate to pick me up. When I was released, a person that I knew understood what I needed the first day out, because I sure didn't at this point. When I got back into prisons today, I carry the message of Narcotics Anonymous. I suggest that inmates have an NA member at the gate when they get out. I have heard so many say, "Oh, I'll check it out, but I've got to do this first." Or, "Be here first. Don't kid yourself. You might die first if you are an addict like me." The first day out was so righteous, I was taken to a home where NA members were expecting me. This one member gave me a new address book with NA phone numbers in it and said, "Give me your old address book. You don't need those old numbers of your connections anymore." Another member took me to his closet and gave me some clothes. I went to a bunch of meetings that day and sure received the love and care I needed, which seemed to make up for all the attention I missed while locked up over the years. Recently, one of the many benefits for me was being able to stand before the judge in the Superior Court and receive my certificate of rehabilitation. I never thought I would be standing in front of any judge for this reason. I'm so grateful today to say that I have been able to go beyond the fellowship for the support I need. I'm speaking about God. I mean a God I can understand and talk to when I need a higher strength, the God I found in Narcotics Anonymous. So if you are in a cell reading this message, goes to you. If you are wondering whether drugs or booze or both are screwing up your life, Find out where an NA meeting is in your facility and check it out. You might be having your own life and learning a better way. And if one addict can make it, so can another. We help each other in Narcotics Anonymous. Man, that is a powerful story. It makes me choke up just reading it, because I can relate to that. Man, when he says that he was going to these meetings and he just heard that they were going to be talking about drugs, so he figured, hey, you know what, I can relate to that, so let me go listen in. And ironically, when I was on the bus yesterday coming back home to here where I'm at now, I happened to just pull up. The bus stop that somebody needed to stop at this one intersection at the bus stop, and it was right outside Club 12. And man, I hadn't been in Club 12 in years, and just at that particular moment, something just clicked in my brain and said, hey, you know what? You need to get off and go in there and see if there's a meeting, and if there is, sit there and take a look. So I did. I got off the bus right then and there, and I walked over, and there was no meeting going on, so I was like a whole hour early. So, I walked over to the convenience store, got something to eat and some drinks, and I walked back. And so I took in the 8 o'clock meeting, and man, I sat there and listened. I didn't share my story. I just sat there and took in the ambiance, just the energy that was in the room, and listening to these people's stories. And it just gave me chills because, it had been a little while, that I haven't gone to a meeting. And, I blame that I got this whole schedule going on that, because of the facility I'm in right now. And I got all these appointments with the VA, and then all the transitional housing appointments and all this stuff. So I started talking myself into saying, hey, you know what? You're doing these videos, so that's your meeting in a sense, which is it's good, you know what I mean? Because it's therapy for me, and it keeps me engaged, right? But it's not the same as being at an actual meeting and getting the feedback and feeling the compassion in people's stories of how programs have changed their lives and how they're living their lives and what they have gone through and that sort of thing. And man, the guy in the story mentions that he was going to meetings regularly, and he was going to the meetings high. And man, can I relate to that? I used to go to meetings all the time loaded, and but nonetheless I would just go, right? And a lot of the times that I was going to meetings, I had to go for probation stuff. He mentions about being incarcerated and being on probation and incarceration and all that stuff, and I could relate. And I could remember going to these meetings and doing a couple of lines of coke before going in, and just sitting in the meeting just to get my signature. But nonetheless, I would still hear the stories, and little by little, every time I would go back, it's just something was always said that planted a seed in my brain about the program and about the higher power and that sort of thing. And then when I was doing that, I was doing a lot of drinking and doing coke, and then I stopped drinking in 2005 and hadn't picked up a drink since. And but the drugs, on the other hand, were a little bit harder for me to kick, and so I kept going to the meetings and kept engaging in the recovery lifestyle, in a sense. I was in the community, right? And and in my faith-based community. But here's how cunning and baffling being an addict is. That even though I was in my 12-step program community and in my faith-based community, I was going to meetings loaded on coke, and I even was going to church loaded on coke. You know what I mean? I can remember being there, getting baptized while fucking just, I was high as fuck. Grinding my teeth and getting dipped in the pool and, giving my life over to God, again and again. And, when I got saved, when I asked Jesus Christ to be my Lord and Savior, I was a teenager. And I remember the day that I did it. I'm in a circle with a pastor and my buddy Pete, and we're high as hell. We're loaded. And, so I can relate to that story because I had been doing this my whole life. And so it's something that when I read it, I'm like, God damn, I say, that's totally me right there. And, but the thing is what he said, if it wasn't for hearing another addict talk and share his story, that he wouldn't have, kept on going back. And eventually, one day, it just clicked for him. They say, there's a saying that says that, a lot of the members of NA and AA say that don't leave before the miracle happens. And man, is that, I believe in miracles, you know what I mean? And for me, it was listening to somebody's story back in 2005, I believe. And listening to that person's story kept me clean for 10 years. And I kicked alcohol and drugs for a 10-year period. But, it's easy to get complacent and it's easy to fall back into the addiction if you don't keep those healthy boundaries and keep yourself in that recovery community and in the faith-based community, because I honestly believe that you need both of those two things to stay clean. And at least I do, in my addiction. And, when I got complacent and I stopped going to the meetings, then, it just happened one day. I relapsed. And that relapse lasted for 5 years, and it was the worst 5 years of my life, I can tell you that. But, because it never gets better, I tell you that. It never gets better. It's always one notch on the belt of getting worse. And, but, yeah, so that story really resonates with me, and I figured I wanted to read it to you guys and share it, and, and kind of give my perspective on how, I translate that story into my addiction and recovery. And and because I'm setting that, like he said, he had to start just hanging out with people in the program and people who were in the sober community and in his faith-based community, is how he kept clean and how he kept his life moving forward for the positive. And that's one of the things that I'm doing now. And I am getting my, I'm doing my due diligence in my service work by doing this podcast and sharing my experiences of my addiction and my recovery, and how I got here and what I did to get here and what I did when I wasn't here. And, just sharing stories is always healthy to listen to, and because it might help somebody else. But that's all I got for today. I just wanted to share that story with you guys, and hopefully it helps somebody. So I guess till the next time on When the Smoke Clears, I am the Recovery Plug.